Hello, tonight on History on Your Doorstep, we are talking about the history of the Barry RNLI Lifeboat Station, when it got founded, who was involved in it, tales and stories of people who took part in the earliest days. Well, Nick, welcome to the programme. Good to have you.
Good to be back.
Fantastic stuff. You've been doing some research into the lifeboat station at Barry.
Yes.
Why is my first question. What was it that brought you to this in the first place?
Well, it's part of the area I represent on the council. It's Barry Island with the lifeboat station there. Of course, they've had a new lifeboat station recently opened, which is fantastic. But of course, it's the 200th anniversary of the RNLI this year.
Oh, right.
Now,
okay.
of course, Barry isn't that old as a lifeboat station, but I was asked by some of the people from the lifeboat people down on the island to perhaps research them a bit, which I was more than happy to do. And whenever I start getting my teeth into the subject, it's amazing what you find.
Right, okay.
And never cease to be amazed.
Okay, so some little hidden gems got dug up along the way.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So the RNLI, of course, it's something that these days people just take for granted because it's just been there for our lifetime.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it like before the RNLI? I mean, what was particularly in this area? I mean, we're aware that the Bristol Channel is quite a hazardous waterway.
Yeah.
How bad were things before it got introduced in this area?
The main reason we ended up with a lifeboat in Barry was because of a particular accident.
Oh, right, okay.
Which I'm more than happy to share with you now. But I mean, before the dock was built here, it would have been a lot quieter because, of course, we didn't have the population or a reason really for ships to come near us. They just went up and down the channel itself.
Yeah.
But the main thing that really happened was that, well, firstly, there was this realisation with the opening of the first dock in 1889 that it was going to be busy around the Barry area. So the local newspaper, the South Wales Star, 3 years later in 1892, published a telegram which had come from the RNLI headquarters saying, we want a lifeboat and station in Barry.
Okay.
And let's get organising towards that.
Right.
So straight away there was support. And the RNLI, being a charity then, as it is still today, had to start raising the money and getting themselves organised. And of course you had to find a crew, and you had to get them trained, and you had to work out where the station would be, and all the other sort of bits you would need to make this all to come together, sort of thing. Yeah. But really what happened was that there was a lifeboat station in Penarth.
Oh.
And because Penarth had its own dock as well. But it was believed by the RNLI, quite rightly, that Penarth was too far away.
Right.
Because we're talking about a time now, late Victorian, where there weren't sort of big engine boats, like they got now. They were oars. These were men, brute power, perhaps with a sail.
Yeah.
So they were going to be phenomenally slower. And the ships themselves, the lifeboats, had to be stronger and more solid, so they were heavier, which also made them slower. So we had this incident on Sunday Island, where a large four-masted ship, the Drum Blair from Liverpool, ran onto a reef. And the local Coast Guard spotted the ship in trouble, a big storm. They'd been pushed onto the island. And the ship was wedged with all the crew still on board, and it was in danger of breaking up and lives being lost. So it was full of iron and coal, which had come from Barry Dock, and it was off. And it had dragged its anchor. See, it had anchored in the gale.
Right, yeah.
But the gale was so severe
that it
dragged the anchor, and then it washed up and cracked itself open, basically, on Sully Island. So we had the fantastic thing called the Barry Rocket Brigade. And not only would they send up rockets to alert things, but also there was this principle where you could fire a rocket with a line to try and attach ropes then to ships in trouble.
Okay, right, yeah.
But the rockets weren't necessarily the most accurate, so it was a bit literally hit and miss, sort of thing. So what we had the Barry Rocket Brigade leaving at 8:30 in the morning in wagons because they didn't have a lifeboat, didn't have a ship or anything.
Oh, right.
So they went overland to Sully Island, basically, which took a few hours
Yeah.
to get there to try and send these rockets over to try and get organised in that way. So it just didn't work very well. There were 30 people on board, you
Right,
know,
yeah.
including, and they made a big thing of this, the paper, the captain's sister.
Okay.
So a rarity having a woman
Yeah,
on board.
yeah.
But the majority of the crew were black Afro-French sailors. The Penarth lifeboat eventually got there
Right.
against the wind
Oh gosh.
by manpower, but it had a bit of a help from a passing tug which literally towed it there. I mean, this sounds incredibly
I know.
old-fashioned, amateurish.
But they were rowing, I assume.
They
the
were
Pe-
rowing,
Penarth-
they were doing everything they could to get there. They actually saved 16 of the people, but it was touch and go. And it broke up eventually. And so this was another thing that convinced the need for a Barry lifeboat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned about the Barry rockets.
Yes.
I think I recall from hearing you speak previously.
Yes.
Were they based in the Watchtower, which is
One of the places, yes. Yeah,
okay.
because it was a tower to watch from.
Yeah.
But also, yes, it was known as the Rocket House at one time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's just down on the. Is it the Nap? Is that
Watchtower Bay, yeah.
Watchtower Bay.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was like a precursor, then, was it?
Yeah.
They were there to
Yeah.
to raise the alarm
Yeah.
if they
Yeah.
spotted something happening.
Yeah.
I get you. I
Yeah.
get you. But yeah, I mean, if that definitely highlights. The need to have something more local. I was, funnily enough, in the summer, I went camping down to St David's in Pembrokeshire.
Lovely.
And came across the story of the St Justinian's lifeboat, and we were talking about how they were powered purely by oar and sail, and that was it.
Yeah.
And of course, in a storm, a
Yeah.
sail is of absolutely no use to you because it just
Yeah.
gets torn to smithereens. One of the things that stuck in my mind about the St Justinian's story, which was very similar in that there was a boat that was dragging its anchor, and they were called out to go from St Justinian's to just off the coast of Ramsey Island,
Yeah.
which is no more than 2 miles away.
That's right, yeah.
But it took them over 2 hours. To cover that distance, because they're rowing against the moving of the tide and the wind,
And they're low in the water.
Yeah.
So they used to
so they're also having to bail water out as well.
absolutely.
It's absolutely ridiculous when you think back.
This is the one thing I've found. There's a certain type of person
I
that
bet.
goes on the
I
lifeboats.
can imagine.
Someone tried to politely explain them as usually a bunch of nutters. Well, they're very brave, very sensible, fantastic people.
Yeah.
But there is got to be a lot of daring do in them.
Yeah.
And fair play to them.
Wow.
I mean,
yeah.
but the times have changed, I'm very glad to say.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the money had now to be raised, you see.
Yes.
And this is where this old link came in, the Wesleyans.
Oh,
They
right.
were
Okay.
They were massive towards lifeboats. They actually had a meeting. So this telegram came in the February of 1892. And within a couple of months, there was a meeting held in a Wesleyan chapel
Right.
in Cardiff.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, there was the movement was
Yeah,
huge
absolutely.
in this area.
And it was on what's known as Roath Road, or
Okay.
Newport Road, as we would call it
Oh,
now.
all right.
So it's the church is no longer there. There's a big office block on it now, and John Corey, probably well known to many, the coal owner, ship owner, and philanthropist. I'll have to say that one day. Described the good work of the RNLI and said, "We need one for Barry." So they inspected the coast yet again to find out where the best place was, and decided on the effectively where the old lifeboat house is now, Jackson's Bay,
Right.
on Barry Island, sort of
Yes.
thing. So the RNLI were prepared themselves to establish and maintain the lifeboat, but they wanted the fundraising to be done to actually buy it, and also buy the lifeboat house and ramp and everything like that. The Wesleyans themselves agreed to raise money,
Right.
which they did very successfully. One small condition, as is usual, whenever people leave lots of money to the RNLI, they tend to end up perhaps having the boat named after them,
Right.
or something like that. So the first one was called John Wesley.
John Wesley. Good
Yeah.
Lord.
And there's a fantastic contemporary model of it, beautifully built by a shipwright, in the foyer of Barry Town Council in the town hall.
Right.
And it's a beautiful thing. but it literally is. It looks like a big lifeboat, which is what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, man-powered.
Yeah.
So this was good stuff. And now, so the thing is, this is 1892.
Yes.
The money got raised. The lifeboat station got built, and the launching party to celebrate the arrival of this lifeboat now was 1901.
What?
It's 9 years. It took 9 years.
What? So the
money had to be raised.
So it took 9 years to raise the money?
Effectively,
right.
And to find the crew, and to find the place, and to build the house, and you name it, all that sort of thing, you know.
Well, Corey, he wasn't short of a bob or two.
Well,
He's
quite.
Different houses, sort of.
Perhaps that's why he had a bob or two. He
Oh,
was
right,
probably
a bit careful with it.
Yes. Careful is a good word. Yes, yeah. So what also happened is we had. So I mean, I'll just give you a few figures of how much we're talking about. You know, it was the boat that they had was the state of the art one at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, there were certain types. This was the biggest one available, the best one available, the best design available. Primitive by today's standards, but that's what they had. £1,710 to build.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And the Wesleyans themselves pledged we'll raise basically a third of that, which they did. The launchway then and everything cost another 2,200. Now this sounds like nothing today, but that was a lot of money, and it was hard earned. And one of the ways that the people of Barry yet again rallied round was the Barry Lifeboat Saturday movement, which was established in 1893.
Yeah.
And there was a big thing, Lifeboat Day, and they would have processions, fundraising events, a bit like you'd have today with
like a carnival or something like that.
Absolutely,
Okay.
street parade. But it was a serious business.
Right.
And people always say, when I tell them that people turned out in their thousands, and every organisation, church, group, society, sports club, you name it, turned out with their banners and everything like that, people say, oh my God, you know, have these people got nothing else to do? And the answer was, no, largely not. Because don't forget, no television, no radio, no distractions in life. If there's a big event, we're going to it.
Yeah.
And very, very successful. I mean, they held an event in 1893, a big pageant and parade. It opened outside the gasworks, which was basically where Gollick-Eredig is now.
Okay,
Yeah.
I know, yeah.
And all the friendly trade societies, public bodies, unions, government bodies, schools, you name it, everyone was there. 20,000 people.
20,000?
20,000 people.
Good
Now, the
grief.
population of the town
Yeah.
wasn't much more than that.
I can imagine, yeah.
Now, admittedly, it probably brought a few people in from outside, which is always a good thing.
Yeah.
The procession was 2 miles in length, and it was a hell of a route. They went all over the town. And it wasn't just people marching.
Yeah.
They carried models of lifeboats.
Oh.
They carried the oars. There was some poor guys who carried people on stretchers
No way.
the whole length, illustrating the work of what the lifeboat would and could and should do, sort of thing. I mean, it was literally not only raising money, but it was also trying to educate the public. What is a lifeboat?
Absolutely.
Because if you haven't seen one
I
before,
suppose, no.
you know, that sort of thing.
So this event was primarily there to raise the money to build it in the first place.
Yes.
Did it continue? Was it like an annual event that continued?
There
afterwards?
were a number of events, certainly, but that was the big one, and it really kicked it off. I mean, they walked the whole town. They went from the Barry Dock News offices, sort of on Holton Road,
Yeah.
Thompson Street, Dockview Road, Castleland Street, Holton Road, Western Square, Vere Street, Harvey Street, Main Street, Island Road. So they went from town all over through Cadoxton and ended up on the island.
Good grief.
But they went up and down side streets. Of course, they had all the bands playing as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was a big thing. It was, come out your houses, come out
Yeah.
and support us, come out and give us your money, sort of thing. Yeah. Absolutely fantastic.
I know. What? It's that 20,000 figure that just that just baffles me. I mean, that is just absolutely staggering. And it just goes to show the level of support that there was
Yes.
for the lifeboat, because I assume, you know, the town's lifeblood was the sea. And was that, you know, the people in the town who worked on the docks or who sailed.
Absolutely.
So
Well,
everyone had a connection, I guess.
There's a lot about, not only is it the right thing to do,
Yeah.
but it's also, I suspect, protecting the good name of our new town.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
We don't want disasters and losses of life on our doorstep.
Yeah.
You know, we want to be hospitable. We want to show the world we're organised. And also, as a new town as we were,
Yeah.
we wanted everything that was going.
Yeah.
You know, lifeboat, yeah, we'll have one of those.
Yeah.
That sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So there was a lot of civic pride and everything in that as well. So it's quite fantastic.
And it's the other thing that's quite incredible is it wasn't that long before that there was absolutely nothing. I mean, we didn't even have lighthouses, because the
right.
Nash Point lighthouse was 1830.
That's right.
So up until that moment in history, and bear in mind, you know, the Industrial Revolution was already nearly a century old. There was nothing. There was absolutely nothing there to stop ships from floundering, and of course, many did. It's inevitable.
What was interesting on this Lifeboat Sunday as well, they actually had a launch of a lifeboat.
Oh, right,
Of course, we
okay.
didn't have one, so we borrowed Penarth's.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
which was and also a good way of illustrating it. Sort
Of
thing.
what you were-
And
yes, yeah.
Penarth were more than happy to join in, of course.
Yeah.
And there was a huge concert that evening in the Romilly Market Hall, Wetherspoons sort of
Right,
thing.
okay.
Barry Male Voice Choir, still going
still
strong.
going, yeah.
Always raising money, always doing their good work.
Yeah.
And they were there. And we even found the songs they sang, and we found them on YouTube, and they're strange old songs, but Martyrs of the Arena
Okay.
and The Pilgrims.
Okay, catchy.
No. But there we are. But the Barry Dock Hotel sold programmes for weeks beforehand.
Yeah.
All the money going to it. I mean, it's fantastic. Everyone pitched in.
Yeah.
And there was only one mishap. I mean, you're talking about people walking down main streets, holding oars up vertically. You know, that must have been hard on the arms sort of
Yeah.
thing. Which resulted in the only major accident or mishap on the day, which was a breaking of a telegraph wire going across the street by the oar.
With an oar.
Yeah. He put his oar
Somebody
in.
a bit
Yeah.
too overzealous.
Absolutely. So Cardiff had its own lifeboat event the week before,
Oh, right, okay.
far smaller.
I thought so.
Yes.
There
Yes.
needs to be a
Yes.
little bit of...
Oh, yes. Far smaller and far inferior. That was the phrase, yeah. I mean, within the same year, there was the Barry Lifeboat Saturday movement, because there were various groups, had a banquet in the Barry Dock Hotel. 50 people. People perhaps with a bit more cash. So let's glad hand them and feed them up and soak them for a few bob sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then we had this rather bizarre menu presented to us. Roast beef and Yorkshire pudding. Well, I like a bit
Yeah,
of
that
that.
sounds reasonable. Yeah.
But on the same plate, of course, your sautéed kidneys, boiled mushroom leg in a caper sauce, potato sprouts, mashed turnips and apple tart. And this was November. And it always reminds me, you ate seasonally in those days.
Of course you did, yeah.
None of this importing your veg
Yeah.
from Africa
Morocco
or
and things like that,
whatever,
yeah.
So, if it's turnips, that's going. Turnips,
that's
you're
what we're
having.
having.
So, yeah.
Oh, amazing.
But the other big thing that went on
Yeah.
is all this got fantastic local and national press coverage,
Yeah.
which is always handy when you're trying to raise money.
Of course.
Some things never change. There was the debate then, as there is in some quarters now, why isn't the government funding this?
Oh, right.
Why
okay.
are they having to rely on charity?
Yeah.
Now, they are fantastically organised charity. They have to be, because they have to raise a lot of cash.
Yeah.
Not only to keep everything that they've got going,
Yeah.
but to eventually replace and repair
Of
and
course.
everything like that.
Yeah.
When I had a recent visit down the new lifeboat station on the island, I mean, just the gear hanging up. And the difference, it strikes me, the difference now with the gear compared the clothing, and the
Yeah,
equipment.
yeah. It was
compared with
oilskins,
then,
wasn't it, in those days?
oilskins and cork-filled vests.
Wow.
So they had these big knobbly vests with lumps of cork in, because that's all they really, really had.
Wow.
And these guys would get wet
Yeah,
and stay wet.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Whereas now, all the modern equipment, the modern means of communication.
Yeah.
Once you're out there in a Victorian lifeboat, you got nothing
Yeah,
to
yeah,
contact
of course.
home or whatever,
Yeah.
So,
And if you're wearing oilskins
Yes.
and cork-lined clothing,
yeah,
the fire potential. I mean, you
Well,
are a tinderbox if you go to a burning
restricts
ship.
your mobility as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, of course.
It's weird. Now the thing is, we eventually got this lifeboat in 1901,
Right.
but the first launch wasn't until 1906.
What?
Which strike exactly my thoughts. Exactly. Now, the first rescue launch, I mean, they had lots of practice launches, they were training. So there was a training period, which you'd understand.
Yeah.
But it was like, well, hang on. If it took 5 years before they did their first serious rescue,
Mm-hmm.
did we really need this lifeboat? And the answer is yes. Because what happened was, I think we worked it out, Barry was so busy.
Yeah.
They were having 3,000-4,000 ships a year coming in. So there's all those ships. There's also all the other ships passing, going to Cardiff,
Yeah. Bristol.
Bath,
you know.
Bristol,
Yeah.
you name it. There's also our tugboats going in and out. So if something just happens outside the dock, someone's going to be there.
Yeah.
And they will react, and they will do the right thing. The lifeboat came into its own when the weather was so bad,
Right.
so dangerously bad, that everyone else would anchor or not come out.
Yeah.
So it was the lifeboat,
Yeah.
and out they went. But I found that quite astounding.
Yeah.
They literally had only about 30 launches in their first 12, 13 years. You're talking 2 a year,
Yeah.
which isn't a lot.
No, of course
But you've
not.
still got to be ready and trained
Yeah,
for it.
yeah.
And yes, they did save lives. So, I mean, 50 years earlier, they invented this cork jacket.
Right.
So they had that. And it evolved over time. I mean, there was still a bit of wearing of these things on the Lusitania and things
Yeah,
like that,
yeah.
because it was still usable. It's just that things have gone on, 1901, we now have the lifeboat house on the station, at a site provided by the Barry Railway Company, God
Right.
bless them,
Yes.
because it was right next to the Barry Pier railway station, which is no longer there. And that's where the paddle steamers used to go for across the
Oh,
channel and
okay.
everything. So
Yeah.
that was good. So let's talk about the first lifeboat.
Yeah.
48 foot long, 12.5 foot wide. You had to have width to make it more stable, and you also had to have width so the guys could have room to move the oars about. There were guys, of course, they were all men in those days. A crew of 13, and the boat weighed 12 tons.
Good grief.
12 tons. Solid, heavy, robust.
Yeah.
Had to stand
Well,
up to
I was going to say, it's out
rocks
of the worst
and
weather,
everything.
isn't it? That's the
Absolutely,
time that it's going
yeah.
out, is when
Yeah.
the weather is at its absolute
Yeah.
absolute worst.
So by the time this was part of another expansion thing with the lifeboats Britain-wide, I mean, I think this was the 286th station.
Oh, right, okay.
38 in Wales, sort
Oh,
of
right,
thing,
okay.
They reckon the expenses would be £100 a year, so they still had to raise money for this, you see. What I do like is that the launch on the 29th of July 1891 of the Penarth lifeboat sort of thing, to launch the Barry fundraising effort, was a lovely lady. Mr. Ernest Reginald Moxley was one of the major fundraisers. So of course his wife did the honours.
Yes.
Our Nellie.
Yeah.
She did the honours, and great things happened. He'd been left a load of money, and so he shared it around, which was quite nice.
Oh.
One lovely story. We wanted to find out who some of the characters of the crew
I was
were
going to
at the
ask.
start.
There must be some
Yeah.
people in this.
Yeah. Well, when I went down the lifeboat station, they've got, from their old lifeboat station, they've looked after them, it's wonderful, the big wooden boards with all the names of the various crews over the year,
Right, okay.
and this, that, and the other, and they're fantastic.
Yeah.
They're a bit of history and little gems in their
Yeah.
own right. So we had a look, and the first coxswain, so that's the boss of the boat, was Evan Owens, Barry Island man.
Okay.
As many of them were,
Right.
because of course you wanted them hopefully to be on
as
the scene
close as possible. Yeah.
No telephones in those days.
Oh yes, of course.
So you'd have the rockets go up to alert people and things like that. So he was a dock pilot, so he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one lovely story is we found his grave in Merthyr Devon Cemetery. He didn't die on duty. He did 16, 18 years, retired, carried on with life, had a life, died, buried in our cemetery. So we thought, as it's the 200th anniversary of the RNLI, we'd mark his grave as the first coxswain, as an example of the RNLI in Barry in their 200th year. And the family, who are in Devon, are delighted with that fact. They were visiting Barry, went to his grave, went to the new lifeboat station, knowing of his history, and I'm glad they did, because it's the only way we managed to get a photo of him.
Oh wow!
Because we wanted to put a photo on the history board,
Yeah.
and we thought if we can't find one, it's going to be a nice picture of the lifeboat
Yeah. Yeah.
that we found him.
That's
and
brilliant.
they're delighted,
Yeah.
and we'll be doing that. So Barry Town Council will do that in the cemetery at Merthyr Devon, and that's nice.
That's superb,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
that. I mean, that sort of personal connection.
Yeah.
It's all well and good when
Yeah.
you hear these stories
Yeah.
of things
Yeah.
that people did. When you actually look into their eyes, as it were,
Yeah.
I mean, it just
Well,
adds such
the
a dimension.
The picture's fantastic, but also the grave makes them. It proves they were there.
Yeah,
It makes
yeah.
them real. So that's lovely. Now he was the coxswain for 16 years, and he only finished really because of ill health. He had attended 29 of the first 30 call-outs.
Good lord.
Yeah, so he was a busy guy.
He was.
But he was a good old egg all round. I mean, before he even became a coxswain, he had been given a certificate for saving a life by the Royal Humane Society in 1894. A guy had tripped and fallen into the dock. In he went, got him out. Fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah. He jumped in, saved him, and he had to dive a number of times to find him.
Good grief.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
So this
absolutely.
guy knew the value of human life.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lifeboat, he was first in the queue, I've no doubt.
Of course.
Yeah. Nowadays, of course, we have some women in lifeboat crews. It's not unusual. We have them as coxswains and everything like that. And it's fantastic how it stays in families as well.
Yeah.
There is that tradition. It goes generation
Yeah.
to generation. You look at the boards, the names are there, the same names, the same surnames. It's phenomenal. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. One other thing is, of course, is I've always been fascinated by the early doctors in our town.
Right.
And there was a doctor, I think he was Irish,
Okay.
Patrick Alexander Kelly.
Oh, now
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you're onto something.
Now, in 1901, he was appointed, so at the start of the lifeboat, the actual Barry lifeboat, he was appointed as the honorary surgeon instructor
Right.
to, and the quote was, train them in aiding the partially drowned.
Okay.
So,
yeah,
most
because
of
if
the
you're
mouth-
fully drowned,
yeah,
there's not so much you can do.
yes, quite. Yeah. So he gave very successful lessons on this first aid. He was from Ireland and he arrived here in 1891, so very early at the start of the docks, and he just put himself into the life of the town. So that's
Wow.
fantastic.
So how sort of involved would he have been? Would he have just trained the crew? Would he have been on call?
Oh,
would he have
well,
gone out with them?
once the crew started getting trained, the word got about, and then
Yeah.
there was ambulance courses then for your St John's type people, but also other people could just enrol, and he would just set up class after class after class.
Oh, brilliant.
So, I mean, this was a new town, and the people wanted to be involved in everything and learn everything.
Yeah.
And there's a course, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, the newspapers of the time, you might not have had radio,
Yeah.
you might not have had television, you might not have had cinema, But my God, there was always something to do.
Yeah.
Whether it was a concert in the church, or there was this, that and the other going on, or there was an event or a sale or a procession or whatever.
Yeah.
But plenty of courses for people to get involved in. And education was paramount.
I was just going to say, because we're talking about a period in history, right at the very beginning of the 20th century, when, for want of a better word, the working classes were becoming aware that they didn't have to be as limited as they didn't have to be ignorant peasants. They were allowed to learn things. And the union movement was had a lot to do with that.
Absolutely.
And it would mobilise the workers in the docks to contribute towards paying for the establishment of libraries and free schools and things like that. So, and even theatres, you know, and things like that.
Education, of course, was always more valued in Wales because, of course, we had the travelling schools and the various things like that. I mean, our literacy rates were way above England and everything like that. And, of course, in 2 languages, which is great.
Yeah.
And as a result, culture, literature, poetry, and everything else flourished. But back to my doctor, Kelly.
Yeah, come on, let's have more about the doctor.
Because we had a lot of young doctors coming to Barry to set up. He wasn't so young. He'd been around. There was the Franco-Prussian War in 1870.
Right, okay.
And he volunteered for that as a medical student. He supported the French in the war. So he treated the troops in the part of the Irish Ambulance Brigade. Mm-hmm. There was always that great affinity between the Irish and the French. At the end of the war, they gave him the old Légion d'honneur, as they do, and he returned to Dublin to finish his studies. He then ended up going to South Africa and treating people in the Boer War.
Right.
So he became quite a... He was obviously becoming very good at treating out of the ordinary injuries.
Yeah.
It's not me breaking my leg, it's someone getting shot or blown up or whatever. So he then he was part of the District Medical Association in Barry, lived in your place, just down the road from me, so that's interesting. So he did all these wonderful things. 1901, he's training all these people. Mm-hmm. He died within a year.
No.
Yeah, he literally just dropped dead on a boat trip, leaving his widow and 6 children.
Good grief.
So, hell of a checkered life. He's buried in our cemetery, yet again in an unmarked grave.
No way.
We're thinking about him as well for a board.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's not so much the person, although in this case, yes, but it's also what they represented or showing a period in time or a history in time.
And this guy sounds like one of our town's great heroes.
Sounds like a hell of a boy.
Yeah. I mean, somebody we should be celebrating without a shadow of a doubt.
Mm.
I mean, what extraordinary characters we had involved in this. What about the crew? What were they like?
Local guys who worked on the docks effectively with the tugboats, the pilots, the ships, and things like that. But I really want to tell you about that first proper call out in 1906.
Oh yes, sorry, we got sidetracked.
This is cracking. This is cracking. January 1906, 7:30 in the morning. Distress rockets were heard and seen. Straight up in the air. Mm-hmm. Yeah, none of this messing about now with bonfire night confusing everyone, thank God. The crew launched and proceeded down the channel. It was choppy with thick rain. A Spanish steamship, the Pepin, had filled with iron ore, had been driven onto the sands 5 miles west of Porthcawl.
Right.
So that's a hell of a distance still to go.
Yeah, from here.
Yeah. The boat had broken its back and the captain had abandoned ship, but there were still 23 on board when the lifeboat got there. An example, like I said, of other ships helping out naturally. Yeah. There was a pilot ship from Port Talbot who helped, and everyone was saved.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The Barry lifeboat got back at 4:30, so they'd been out 10 hours.
No.
10 hours.
God. Well, wasn't there... I mean, there is a lifeboat station in Porthcawl. When did that... Was that later then, I assume? It must have...
Do you know, I haven't looked into Porthcawl. That's for someone in Porthcawl.
Is it? Well, I was just thinking, if they went all the way down
to
what sounds like Kenfig, then clearly there wasn't somewhere nearer.
Yeah.
And there is a lifeboat station.
Do you want a bit of scandal?
Come on, let's have it.
A year later, June of 1907.
Yeah.
Now, There are confused newspaper reports,
They usually are.
but the big London newspapers latched onto this story.
Okay.
The Barry lifeboat was called out to rescue 3 gentlemen from Penarth. They were clinging onto a skiff near Sully Island. They had left Penarth in high winds, and the skiff, sort of punt really,
Right,
yeah,
okay.
nothing very special,
Yeah.
had been blown onto its side. The men had been in the water for an hour. It made national press as the son of Mr. Joseph Rank of the flour mills,
Right.
and later of the cinema people,
Yes, yeah.
had been one of the 3. They had planned to sail to Barry from Penarth and get the train back. Now that's a bit adventurous. That's a bit odd. What's that all
Well, I
about?
was gonna say, that is just
Well,
strange to
I
think.
think we know it was a Sunday.
Okay.
I think they were trying for the 3-mile rule,
Oh, for
which
the
was
Sunday closing.
Sunday drinking. They wanted to become legitimate travellers
Yes.
by travelling more than 3 miles. And it didn't quite go to plan, sort of thing.
There were some genius
Yeah.
ruses to get around.
So
that.
even though the lifeboat was called out, a tug from Bristol, which happened to be passing,
took them in.
picked them up, sort of thing. So it shows you just how busy that channel was.
Yeah.
So
It probably could have done without those 3 idiots.
if you're going to be a bit daft, you had a good chance of being saved. But yeah. Now, the other thing that gets me as well is that we hear about ships and boats, but
Yeah.
of course we do get people who go swimming,
Yeah.
getting into difficulty.
Yeah.
And there's a number of examples of people swimming out too far from, say, Whitmore Beach sort of thing and drowning.
Mm-hmm.
There was a First World soldier. He went out with 2 mates swimming, and he was the best swimmer,
Right.
but he got far out, he got cramp, couldn't continue, and his friends couldn't save him
Oh.
because they wouldn't have managed to save themselves either.
Yeah.
So he drowned. Eventually the body washed up. He's in our cemetery as a war decorated
Oh.
stone sort of thing. But
Yeah.
1904,
Okay.
big year in Barry, big debates, bathing at Whitmore Bay.
Right.
And this is the big debate. The safest place to swim at Whitmore Bay, and you'll see it with the Coast Guard and the various life-saving groups down there, is in the middle.
yeah.
Yeah? Here's a flag, here's a flag. If you want to swim, do it between these flags, please. It's much safer. But oh no, we had an issue. The Barry Licensing Committee said, no mixed bathing here.
Oh,
So
I see.
women were on the left
Yeah.
and the men were on the right.
Good lord.
So imagine if you turn up as a family,
yeah.
husband, wife, couple of kids. Well, you can't be with your wife, or you can't be with your husband or whatever,
Yeah.
because no mixed bathing.
Yeah.
And what do? You share the kids out? I mean, it was madness. And this went on for years. In 1904, the Barry Licensing Committee passed a resolution to allow mixed bathing. They were up for it. It's sensible.
Yeah.
It's human. There was uproar. One committee meeting lasted 8 hours and was finally adjourned at 3 in the morning.
Oh, good lord.
Now, I've been to some long council meetings in my time, but, incredible. One councillor claimed if mixed bathing was allowed, the moral status of the nation would be lowered.
Yeah.
So they parked the issue
Yeah.
for a few years. They had it again in 05 and 06. And in the end, this is what I like. Our Mr. Owens, our first coxswain,
Right.
comes back into the picture. They had a debate in the Marine Hotel on Barry Island.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to set up an amateur swimming and life-saving association.
Right.
Don't forget, he was already the coxswain
Yeah, yeah.
5 years. He said, are we in favour of mixed bathing? They went, yes. Basically, it happened. He said, if mixed bathing had been permitted, there would be less drowning fatalities.
Well,
Simple as
well,
that.
I know, well, it makes so it does make perfect sense.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we just take it for granted now.
yeah.
Something that's, I mean, here's a little bit of trivia for you.
Yeah.
I mean, this is more to do with Minehead than Barry.
Right.
But
No, Minehead
I'm sure
wrong,
the
yeah.
same thing would have applied.
Yeah.
So they needed 2 beaches. when they came to this realization
Yeah.
of mixed bathing.
Yeah.
It was not acceptable. So
Yeah,
they wanted
yeah.
to, and the main beach on one side was the one that was given over to the women, and we're quite used to seeing pictures of how women bathed in those days. So
Sure.
they would be clothed
Yeah.
from head to toe.
Yeah.
They would have a hat.
Yeah.
They would have a suit that covered everything down to the wrists,
Yeah.
and everything down to the ankles.
Yeah.
They would even wear a form of shoe as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And they would have bathing machines, they were called,
Yeah.
which was basically...
We had them in Barry.
Yeah, a wooden caravan.
We had hundreds of them in
There
Barry.
we go.
Yeah.
Which you rolled
Yeah.
into the sea.
Yeah.
And they would
Yeah.
climb down a ladder to get
Yeah.
into the sea. And that's how the women bathed.
Yeah.
The little known fact is the men used to bathe nude.
Well, this is another thing. The council had requests from various groups.
Yeah.
And early on, there was a request from Cardiff,
Yeah.
a boys' brigade troop, or whatever they're called, had asked, could they come along? And they were all like 16 and 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
And the council said, yes, lovely to see you, this and yeah. Can we bathe nude? And the main reason was people didn't have bathing suits.
Yeah, that's right.
Because
That was-
it's a once a year thing almost. you
And
know?
it was a big
Yeah.
divide between
Yeah.
men and women.
Yeah,
Men,
yeah.
you know, the idea of a man putting on clothes to go into the sea
That's
was
right.
just unheard
That's
of.
right, that's right.
But women, on the other hand, were virtually mummified
Yeah, yeah,
in order
yeah.
to remain decent. The Minehead problem was that the other beach wasn't accessible. So
No.
they brought miners from South Wales to
Yeah,
come over
yeah.
and bore a tunnel through the rock,
Incredible.
so they could get access to the beach. But naked swimming. Yeah, who'd have thought?
Well.
I know, and that was in the days when they were, craving for decency. We always think of the Victorian era as being so prudish, but
Well-
not when it came to men.